The Harry Potter movies changed a lot from the books, but their worst crime wasn't what they cut. It was how they reshaped the characters completely. And the biggest victim was Harry Potter himself, the character whose name is literally in the title. Movie Harry feels like a completely different character to me. I don't see much bravery in him. I don't see his love for his friends. One of Harry's defining traits, his leadership, is almost completely erased from the films. Instead, most of the time, he doesn't really take action. Everyone else ends up helping him, and things just kind of fall into place for him. At this point, movie Harry almost feels like the complete opposite of the book. And what's even more interesting is that, as someone who read the books first and then watched the movies, I can feel how the movie version has slowly and subtly affected my perception of the original character as well. And honestly, that's really concerning. Nowadays, people tend to watch movies and TV shows rather than read books. And that leads a new generation of audiences to think, wait, this Harry Potter thing isn't nearly as good as you says it is. As a result, many of these new viewers may end up losing interest in the franchise altogether. So today we're looking at how the films strip away one of Harry's defining traits, his initiative. So what is initiative? Initiative is an inner driving force. Means all your character's choices and actions come from their own, not somebody else pushed them to act. In the China Harry Potter fandom, there is a saying like, the movie title should be Hermione Granger and Her Two Useless Man. Well, I mean, that's not entirely wrong if we're only talking about the movies. More or less, it's really accurate to describe the movie version, because the movies gave almost all of Harry and Ron's highlight moments to Hermione. So let's take a look at some examples with that. Scenario 1. Harry wakes up in the hospital wing and finds out that Sirius Black will be executed. This is how movie Harry and Hermione react.
Master, you've got to stop them. They've got the wrong man.
It's true, sir. Sirius is innocent.
It is, we know the truth. Please believe us.
Where's Ron?
7:30. Where were we at 7:30?
I don't know, going to Hagrid's?
Come on, and we can't be seen.
Hermione! Please tell me what it is we're doing.
You keep trying. Come on.
Buckbeak, okay. Quickly, hurry up, okay.
Come on, Buckbeak. Come and get the nice dead ferret. Come on, it's him.
See? This 10 seconds shots already show that Hermione in the movie is the one with initiative and strong motivation. Her desire to save Sirius Black is way stronger than Harry's. So what Harry doing in this one? Huh. Look like he just a follower Hermione and do whatever she said. Hermione is the one leading every step of the way. She's the one coming up with every plan. She's the one constantly pushing the story forward. Man, honestly, if Hermione weren't doing all of that, does Harry even know where Sirius is right now? And I got a rant about this one. You will be able to save more than one innocent life tonight. Hey, they basically never let Harry have one good moment on screen, huh? But in the novel, it's Harry who actually figures out why Dumbledore said that line. After they use the time turner, go back a few hours and see Buckbeak still alive. It's just like so many of Book Harry's iconic moments be shifted over to Hermione in the movie. Whether a character has initiative or not can completely change the way the audience perceives them. One feels intelligent, proactive, and capable. The other feels slow, passive, and dumb. All right, guys. Quick question. Which one of these two is Sirius Black's godson/daughter? I mean, I just watched the whole movie and never read the books before. I assume it's the girl. Why? Well, do I really need to explain? If you're new to the Harry Potter movies, you'll probably end up liking Hermione a lot more than Harry or Ron. And honestly, that's not surprising. Because in the films, Hermione is basically the leader of the group. She's the brains of the team, and she has strong motivation to act, natural leadership, and even battle talent. Yeah, no shit. They even went that far. It was in Prisoner of Azkaban that the filmmakers really started going all in on turning Emma Watson's Hermione into this all-knowing, never wrong, a perfect character. But the trade-off is that Harry and Ron lose a huge part of what makes them who they are, and they end up feeling almost irrelevant. Basically just background characters in a lot of scenes. So let's take a minute and look at what actually happened in the books when they learned that Sirius Black was about to receive the Dementor's kiss. After waking up in the hospital wing, Harry discovers that Sirius has already been taken into custody by the Ministry of Magic, and things only get worse from there. Snape, after hearing what happened, is still determined to bypass Dumbledore and go straight to Fudge, fully convinced he has the truth, and that Sirius deserves to be executed. Meanwhile, Harry is thrown straight into a situation where everything depends on him speaking up. He rushes to Fudge, trying desperately to explain the truth. Sirius is innocent, and it's Peter Pettigrew who should be in Azkaban. But there's a problem. A fatal one. He has no proof. And in that moment, Fudge doesn't see a witness to the truth. He sees a traumatized boy who's clearly confused and unreliable. So he dismisses Harry completely. Hey, I ain't got to say which one's better, right? Because of everyone else's misunderstanding of the situation, Harry has to argue over and over again with Madame Pomfrey, Fudge, and Snape. He gets more frustrated, more desperate, and his voice keeps getting louder. And that's actually a great example of initiative in character writing. Harry reacts because he genuinely cares about Sirius. The only family he has left in this world? Well, if you don't counting the Dursleys. He's terrified that Sirius is about to die, and he's desperate for everyone to learn the truth about Peter Pettigrew. That inner motivation naturally comes through in his words, his actions, his emotion. Compare that to the movie, where Harry barely seems concerned that Sirius's life is hanging by a thread. Instead, it feels like he's just following Hermione around and doing whatever she tells him to do. He even doesn't have any emotion, basically. That's not how someone reacts when their loved one is in great danger. At the same time, when Harry and Hermione use the time turner, their reactions in the books are actually completely opposite to what we see in the movie. The moment Harry realizes they've gone back in time, he immediately starts thinking about what Dumbledore meant and quickly comes up with a plan to save Sirius. Meanwhile, Hermione is completely panicked and overwhelmed, constantly asking Harry what they should do next. This is a small but clear example that supports the idea that Harry is the real leader. Hermione's intelligence and competence are mostly academic, book knowledge. But when things go wrong in real situations, she tends to panic and lose her composure. Harry, on the other hand, is able to react quickly and make decisions under pressure. In future videos, when we talk about leadership, I'll break this down in more detail. And that's the real problem with these changes. By constantly transferring other characters' defining moments and personality traits to Hermione, the films don't just damage Harry and Ron's characterization, they also dilute Hermione's. Book Hermione has her own unique strengths and charm that set her apart from Harry and Ron. And that's one of the reasons why the characters in the novels feel so vivid and alive. I've seen a lot of Book Hermione fans complain that movie Hermione barely feels like the same character they fell in love with. In a well-written story, whether it's a novel, a movie, or a TV series, characters aren't supposed to be perfect. They should have strengths, weaknesses, flaws, and limitations. That's what makes them human. That's what makes them interesting. If a story genuinely presents a character as perfect, that's often a sign of the writer as an amateur. With all these bad changes in the movies, in the end, everybody's characterization falls apart. During the scene in the Shrieking Shack, the line, "If you want to kill Harry, you'll have to kill us too," originally belonged to Ron in the novel, but we all see what actually ended up in the movie. That just only the tip of the iceberg. The movie's entire Shrieking Shack sequence is an even bigger mess. I'll be breaking it down in much greater detail in my upcoming videos. So, buckle up, guys. Scenario 2. Like I said before, initiative is one of the most important ways we judge a protagonist character. Do they have emotional reactions? Do they actively think through problems when things get difficult? Do they go out and earn the next clue through their own efforts, or is it simply dropped into their lap? Because if every answer comes easy, if every important lead is handed to them, and if all they have to do is sit around waiting for their friends, teachers, or other people to bail them out, then the character isn't really driving the story no more. A story that should be driven by its protagonist ends up becoming one where the story drags the main character along, and that's usually a sign of poor character writing. Now, let's go back to Goblet of Fire and look at how the movie handles the preparation phase before each challenge. Um, well, it barely does. After Hagrid shows Harry the dragons in the Forbidden Forest, you'd expect at least some scenes of Harry trying to figure out how he's supposed to survive a fight against one. But no. The movie immediately jumps to Harry warning Cedric about the dragons, then Moody punishing Draco, and then basically telling Harry what to do. Use his strength, flying. And when Harry finally enters the arena, the film spends about 30 seconds showing him getting chased around by the Horntail. And then, unbelievably, Hermione has to scream from the stands to remind him to use his wand before he finally casts the summoning charm. I mean, what the actually fuck? He needs Hermione to remind him that he got a wand? What exactly were the filmmakers trying to achieve with this change? Man, fuck this shit. The second task isn't any better. The clue inside the golden egg? Cedric basically tells Harry exactly where to go after the Yule Ball. Just go to the prefect's bathroom. Then we get a few seconds of the trio sitting in the library. Well, technically Harry and Ron isn't studying, they just falling asleep. And then, somehow, we cut straight to the morning of the task, and Neville suddenly shows up with Gillyweed. That's it. Not once does the movie show Harry seriously trying to figure out how to overcome either challenge. I don't see him thinking. I don't see him struggling. I don't see him putting in any effort. He pretty much don't need to do anything, and somehow everybody else just helps him. The clues come to him. The solutions come to him. Everything is handed to him. Bro, like, I almost fell asleep watching this. Now, some of you might be thinking, hey, wait a minute. Wasn't the book version basically the same? Harry got help there too, didn't he? Aren't you being a little hypocritical here, Casey? Well, that's a fair question, and the answer is no, because the difference isn't whether Harry receives help. The difference is how hard he has to work before that help arrives. And that, my friends, makes all the difference in the world. All right, so let's look at what Harry actually does in the book. The very same night he discovers that the first task involves dragons, he sneaks off to the Gryffindor common room and speaks with Sirius through the fireplace. And what's interesting is that Sirius immediately realizes something is seriously wrong. First, he points out how bizarre it is that the goblet selected 4 champions instead of 3. Then he starts piecing things together and suggests that someone might be plotting something much bigger behind the scenes. He's even one of the first people to suspect that it could somehow be connected to Voldemort. Harry is about to ask Sirius if he knows any way to deal with a dragon, but before they can get into that discussion, Ron accidentally interrupts the conversation. So what does Harry do next? Does he sit around waiting for somebody to solve the problem for him? No. The very next morning, he and Hermione practically move into the library. They spend hours digging through massive piles of books, desperately searching for anything that might help him survive the first task. But it doesn't work too well. Most of the books are completely useless. Aside from a few spells that might make a dragon even more aggressive, they find almost nothing that could actually help Harry. Even Hermione is struggling. She's whispering ideas nonstop beside him, constantly trying to think of possible solutions. At one point, she wonders whether transfiguration could work, but almost immediately dismisses the idea. Transforming a creature that large would be incredibly difficult. Even Professor McGonagall probably couldn't pull it off. And Harry isn't doing any better. He's flipping through spell after spell. Instant scalping. Well, dragons don't have hair. Pepper breath? That would probably make a dragon's fire even stronger. Horn tongue. Great, because giving a dragon another weapon is exactly what he needs. The point is that Harry is trying. He's researching, he's brainstorming, he's failing, he's hitting dead ends, he's actively searching for a solution. Only after all of that happens does fake Moody step in the following day and guide Harry in the right direction. He encourages Harry to think about his strengths. So, what is the one thing Harry does exceptionally well? Flying. And from there, Harry himself connects the dots and realizes he can use the summoning charm to call his firebolt. And it doesn't stop with the first task. Before the second task, the trio is right back in the library, desperately searching for a way for Harry to survive underwater for an entire hour. And once again, they get nowhere. Harry's heart would leap every time he spotted the word water on a page, only to discover that it was usually part of some completely useless potion recipe. Take 2 pints of water, half a pound of shredded mandrake leaves, and a newt. Not exactly what he was looking for. Ron even suggests using the summoning charm again to grab a set of diving gear from a nearby Muggle village. Of course, the ideal solution would be for you to transfigure yourself into a submarine or something, Hermione said. Yeah, I don't fancy walking around with a periscope sticking out of my head, said Harry. I suppose I could always attack someone in front of Moody. He might do it for me. Eventually, McGonagall calls Ron and Hermione away to her office, leaving Harry to continue the search alone. He keeps going, hour after hour, past dinner, past 8 o'clock, until the library finally closes and Madame Pince kicks him out. So Harry heads back to the Gryffindor common room and keeps searching. He reads until he's so exhausted that he eventually falls asleep on top of his books. Only then does Dobby wake him up and hand him the gillyweed. Notice the pattern here? Harry gets help in the end, but only after we've seen him exhaust every option he can think of. The help doesn't replace his effort. Now let's move on to the third task. Unlike the movie, where Harry more or less stumbles from challenge to challenge, the book actually shows him preparing. McGonagall allows Harry to use the Transfiguration classroom during lunch hour to practice. Harry spends weeks training combat spells: the Impediment Curse, the Reductor Curse, the 4-point spell, the Shield Charm, the Jellylegs Jinx. And those practice sessions matter. Many of those spells end up helping Harry survive the maze later on. But the importance of this training goes far beyond the third task, because this is where Harry begins developing the practical combat experience that defines him in the later books. This is the foundation that eventually allows him to teach defense against the dark arts in the 5th year. It's why he's able to create Dumbledore's army. It's why other students are willing to learn from him. And it's why, when the Battle of the Department of Mysteries finally arrives, Harry and his friends are capable of standing their ground against actual Death Eaters. The movie cuts almost all of this. And when you remove all the effort, the training, the payoff loses its meaning. Movie Harry doesn't become skilled because he worked for it, he just suddenly is. So what we end up with is a complete character arc. Character effort to character growth to character competence. The problem is that the movies cut out the first 2 steps and leave only the third. So naturally, audiences are left wondering, hey, wait a second. When did he learn how to do all that? Because we never see the effort. We never see the growth. We only see the result. Movie Harry is more like a privileged person, someone who doesn't need to put in any effort and rarely even tries to. All his friends, teacher, and, shall we say, parent figure is going to help him. Every important clue seems to find its way to him automatically. All he has to do is follow a straight line, and eventually, mission accomplished. Defeat the evil forces, earn glory and fame. I think we can all agree that there's nothing interesting about a character like this, right? The filmmakers didn't just change the dialogue and character portrayals. Even the smallest details in the movies constantly serve the same purpose, shifting as many elements as possible over to Hermione. Take the camera sitting, for example. A lot of the shot compositions are deliberately framed with Hermione in the center position. Time and time again, the movies seem determined to present Hermione as the true protagonist of the franchise. I mean, you guys can easily see that, right? And sometimes it gets so blatant that it's almost ridiculous. There's even a scene in Deathly Hallows where Ron completely ignores what Harry just said and immediately turns to Hermione for her opinion instead. Like I said at the beginning in the movies, Harry has basically been reduced to a supporting character in the end. Hermione is the one leading the group. She's the one with the initiative, the intelligence, the decision-making ability, and even the combat experience. But creating this version of Hermione came at the expense of Harry. Any standout moment that could be transferred to Hermione, they won't hesitate to do so. The rest that couldn't be transferred were often rewritten or framed in ways that made Harry look less capable, less appealing, and sometimes just plain stupid. The filmmakers even went out of their way to shoot scenes that undermine Harry. Take the entire Sirius rescue sequence in Prisoner of Azkaban, for example. There are so many shots that seem designed specifically to make Harry look so incompetent. The intent couldn't be more obvious. In the books, Harry is extremely agile. He's great in a fight, quick to react under pressure, and a natural athlete. After all, it was his performance during his very first flying lesson, when he stood up for Neville and impressed McGonagall with his flying talent, that earned him a spot on the Quidditch team as a first-year student. And yet, when I watch this scene, I honestly can't tell which one of them is supposed to be the fastest and most agile seeker on the Quidditch team. The filmmakers must have been frustrated that they couldn't replace Harry with Hermione on the team, and they certainly couldn't have Hermione cast the Patronus that ultimately saves Sirius. What a shame, huh? Guys, I'm not done yet. Take a look at this clip.
Okay, so this morning I'm going to be putting you all through a few drills just to assess your strengths. Quiet, please.
Shut it!
Hey, if you need your girlfriend to maintain your locker in order, we ain't gonna play no more. The Gryffindor Quidditch team will stay in the button of the league for an entire year as long as you are the team's captain. In the book, the Quidditch tryouts last for almost the entire morning. Lots of students who don't know how to fly. Romilda Vane and a bunch of Harry fangirls showed up just to watch him, and even students from Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw come to stir things up. Eventually, Harry has had enough. He shouts that if anyone else tries to interfere, he'll hex them. Book Harry has real presence. He takes control of the situation. He's nothing like the soft, wishy-washy version we get in the movies. Hey, I don't know what you guys' reaction was. I was just... Well, alright, I was actually planning to wrap up this video here, but then I remembered another really important point. Well, it ties directly back to the first thing I talked about. A character's initiative isn't just shown through their actions. It's also shown through their emotional reactions when something bad happens to the people they care about, or when they're misunderstood by their friends. Because if you don't care about someone or something, you're not going to have much of an emotional response. And if you don't have an emotional response, you're not going to be motivated to do anything about it. Harry and Ron's friendship is a perfect example of this. Now, we all know that Harry and Ron are best friends. Let's take a look at how the movies and the books choose to portray that relationship. The movies never really make that friendship feel real. This two guys just slightly closer than ordinary friends. I mean, like, well, sure, they're in the same house, sleep in the same dormitory, and they happen to go on the same litter adventures together. And that's it. So back to Goblet of Fire once again. We can clearly see that Ron is already upset the moment Harry's name comes out of the Goblet of Fire. And in the book, J.K. Rowling makes the reason pretty clear through Hermione's explanation. Ron is jealous. Ron is the youngest son in a large family. He's always wearing hand-me-downs, always living in the shadow of his older brothers, while Harry constantly ends up being the center of attention. The movie barely explores any of this, but at the very least, Rupert actually portrays the emotion. You can clearly see that Ron is angry. But then there's Daniel. Well, this very first shot already gets the character wrong. In the book, after leaving Dumbledore and the other professors, Harry spends the entire time thinking that even if the rest of the world doesn't believe him, Ron and Hermione surely will. Then he gets dragged into an unwanted celebration in the Gryffindor common room for half an hour. And all that time, he desperately wants to see Ron and Hermione. So when Harry finally walks into the dormitory and sees Ron, shouldn't his first instinct be to explain himself? Shouldn't he immediately try to convince Ron that he didn't put his own name into the goblet? Shouldn't he want his best friend to believe him? Instead, movie Harry just sits on his bed staring at the wall. Then Ron starts this conversation. He's clearly emotional. He immediately confronts Harry, asking why he didn't tell him about entering the tournament. But Harry's reaction throughout this whole scene is just weird. All of his explanations and pushback feel way too calm. There's none of that feeling of desperately wanting his best friend to believe him. He's got this poker face the entire time. And then we get to this moment. Bro, what this supposed to mean? It almost like, believe me or don't, I don't really care. And just turns around and goes to sleep. Like, what? Your best friend thinks you lied to him, and that's your reaction? The acting here is just really poor. In the next scene, Harry is still talking to Sirius through the fireplace when Ron walks in and interrupts. And once again, movie Harry just doesn't really react. He's calm, almost unbothered. But in the book, it plays out very differently. Harry is forced to quickly end the conversation and tell Sirius to get out of the fire before anyone else sees him. And when he realizes the person who walked in is Ron, he actually loses his temper and starts shouting. Even though he knows Ron didn't mean to interrupt him, Ron gets angry too, his face going red, and he snaps back sarcastically, telling Harry to get ready for his next interview. And then Harry throws one of those Potter Stinks badges at him. If you're lucky, you might even get a scar. Isn't that what you always wanted? That's the kind of emotional back and forth that completely disappears in the movie. Throughout all 8 movies, Daniel barely shows much facial expression in most scenes. Sure, there are a few moments where the script clearly calls for a big emotional reaction, and he delivers one. But outside of those scenes, he's usually just calm. Almost weirdly calm. It's like he's some 200-year-old who's already seen everything in this relationship, politics, philosophy, conflict. None of it seems to surprise him anymore. Kind like Master Yoda, I guess. Well, okay, maybe that level of calm works for Yoda, but we're talking about a 15-year-old teenager here. Umbridge is literally about to use the Cruciatus curse on Harry to force information out of him. And Harry's expression is still the same. Just this really mild calm, like he's barely bothered by what's happening. Well, maybe there is some expression there. I can tell he's going for a sort of shocked reaction. And honestly, despite how hard Daniel seems to be working to sell it, I can see a little bit of surprise. Sure, but even if it's supposed to be surprise, it still feels completely wrong for the scene. Sure, Harry might be shocked that Umbridge is actually willing to use an unforgivable curse. And yay, he might be shocked for a second. After that, he should be furious and ready to fight back. He should be determined not to tell her a single word. Instead, we get this. And the funny thing is, pretty much everyone else in the scene is doing a decent job. Hermione looks worried and is clearly trying to think of a way out. Ron looks angry. Look at Draco. Dude's practically trying not to laugh. And then there's Luna, who's just standing there looking calm. Well, okay. Luna being calm actually makes sense. 'Cause she's Luna, right? Now compare that to the very first HBO trailer. This is Harry's reaction when Petunia cuts his hair. Guys, I don't want to explain it no more. Movie Harry just gives me this feeling of being cold. Yeah, cold blood. What's the first thing or animal that comes to your mind when you hear that word? Yet, movie Harry should be in Slytherin. By the end of the first task, this is how the movie shows Harry and Ron making up. Bro. What's that smile supposed to mean? Seriously? It almost looks like Harry said, yeah, you do owe me that. And you're telling me these two are supposed to be best friends? Guys, I don't know about you, but I ain't buying this. Now let's look at how the book handles the exact same moment. Ron is about to apologize, but Harry suddenly realizes he doesn't even need to hear it anymore. Before Ron could get the words out, Harry cuts him off. Forget it. Then they head outside the tent to watch the judges give their scores. When Karkaroff gives Harry only 4 points, Ron immediately loses it. 4? You lousy, biased scumbag. You gave Crumb 10. But Harry doesn't care. He wouldn't have cared if Karkaroff had given him 0. Ron getting angry on his behalf meant more to him than 100 points ever could. See? That's what real friendship looks like. I'm seriously going to ask whether these amateur movie directors ever bothered to read even a single page of the novel. There's another really interesting comparison between the movies and the HBO series here. This is Harry's first time on the Hogwarts Express, when Ron asks him if he's really that Harry Potter. Jesus. In the movies, Harry almost like he enjoys the attention. What? That lightning scar isn't just a symbol of the boy who lived, but also a reminder of tragedy. His parents' death, growing up as an orphan with no family, no friend, no real support. And yet he just proudly shows it off like it's something to be excited about? like he's happy about it. Movie Harry comes across as way more vain than he should be. Oh my god, what the fuck is going on here? Now
Are
compare
you
that to the
really Harry
HBO
Potter?
series. Harry's reaction there actually feels much more accurate. He's an orphan, raised in a really abusive environment with the Dursleys, so emotionally he should be pretty sensitive and guarded. So in this scene, his reaction should be more shy at first and only later, a bit hesitant when he admits it. And honestly, Dominic's performance here is fantastic. The subtle facial expressions are something I've almost never seen in movie Harry. FYI, this guy definitely read the novel. The first trailer has been released for about 3 months now. I'm not planning to do a full breakdown of it, but I will be comparing moments like this throughout the rest of the series. Right now, there are still a lot of YouTube videos criticizing or doubting the HBO series. And honestly, most of those discussions are very superficial, still stuck at a pretty surface level. But if you watch this entire video, you'll probably come to the same conclusion as I did, that Black Snape is the least you should concern. I also have to say, personally, I don't like when casting decisions feel like they're prioritizing diversity over the original vision. But at the end of the day, all of that only really matters if the main character and the story are actually handled well in the first place. Because if your franchise already has a main character who is this poorly written, like the movie version of Harry, then even if you brought Alan Rickman back at his 30-year-old peak to play, I quote, the perfect Snape, it still wouldn't fix anything. Your main protagonist is already completely broken. He's basically collapsed as a character, almost turning into a joke. And once that happens, the whole story just stops feeling believable. That's also why a lot of movie fans end up preferring characters like Draco or Snape, because your protagonist just doesn't hold up. And let's be clear, Alan Rickman's Snape is not even a real version of Snape. It's basically just him being himself on screen. Besides, Snape doesn't really become a central figure until The Prince's Tale in the final season. He's just not that important in the first 6 years. I just wish they'd given our head of house, Professor Flitwick, more screen time. The film team deliberately changed a lot of scenes that made characters like Malfoy and Snape being supposedly cruel, vicious, and in many cases, they even removed those moments entirely. As a result, these more antagonistic characters end up feeling less hateful on screen, and in some cases, even strangely likable. But I'm not going to go too deep into Snape here. I'll probably make a separate video to that later, but not right now. So I'd expect the series to put a lot more focus on the trio, as well as the other students in their year across all the different houses. So, yeah, I'm actually pretty optimistic about you three. Good luck, little one. Over the past few months, I've watched a lot of Harry Potter YouTube videos, and I've realized that not many people actually analyze Harry as a character in depth. Even in videos that compare the movies and the books, the discussion about Harry's character differences is usually just 10 minutes or so. Very few of them go into a full, systematic breakdown, and a lot of takes are still stuck at a pretty surface level. Things like, why doesn't he have green eyes? After watching so many of these videos, I've honestly only found a small number of creators whose perspectives really align with mine. Through today's video, I just want to make one thing clear. The movies completely reshape Harry into almost the opposite of his book version, and in doing so, they also weaken the character work of many other characters as well. That's also why I'm actually very excited about the HBO series. I really hope it stays faithful to the original books in terms of character portrayal and detail, while also expanding the magic world in meaningful ways. For example, I've seen rumors about Nicholas Flamel and his wife appearing, Malfoy Manor potentially showing up in Season 1, and even Hogwarts professors like McGonagall personally delivering letters to Muggle-born students. Most importantly, I hope the series truly gets Harry right, the actual main protagonist of the story, as well as Ron and the rest of the cast. Alright guys, let's wrap this up. When it comes to portraying Harry as the main character, especially this key trait of initiative, the movies completely flip him into almost the opposite of what he is in the books. He rarely takes action on his own. I don't really see much leadership or any real sense of unity or influence over the people around him. And even his emotional connection to his friends and loved ones feels surprisingly muted. He's more like a cold-blood person at times. And Initiative is just one example of how the movies undermine the main character. In the upcoming videos of this series, I'll continue breaking this down from other angles, different traits, different quality, and different aspects of personality, to analyze how the films completely reshape Harry Potter in a bad way, the actual main protagonist of the story.
If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and leave your comments below. This channel will continue to produce all kinds of content about Harry Potter. So don't forget to subscribe, guys.